Good morning, traders. I'm Emily Bonney, the CEO of the Investment Banking Institute and your host here at NewsWare's Trade Talk. Joining me is trading anchor Bill Olson, who brings more than 30 years of institutional trading experience to our program. At Trade Talk, we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Today is Friday, May 16th. Markets are attempting to hold on to some semblance of a rally after stocks finished mixed yesterday. Amongst a flurry of economic data, the Dow and the S&P 500 ended regular trading in the green. The Dow added 271 points, or 0.65%. The S&P 500 extended its winning streak for a fourth day, advancing 24 points, or 0.41%. The Nasdaq slipped into the red to close lower by 34 points, or 0.18%. Bill, let's get into Friday's action with what is happening in the markets this morning.
Hi, yes. Good morning, Emily. I'm watching the S&Ps. We're up 0.29%, about 0.3%. That's that's a positive way to start the morning and end the week. That's for sure. Big news out there. President Trump is wrapping up his Middle East tour today. He indicated that the UAE will invest in U.S. Produced semiconductors. That's kind of positive, and he also indicated that the U.S. will be making some announcements shortly on setting tariff rates for its trading partners within the next few weeks. There's a lot of talk on trade deals. The Europe is has a lot of comments on it overnight, so that's kind of positive. But today, this morning, you got to watch that housing data that's in focus this morning, and you got that University of Michigan consumer sentiment number that's coming out at 10 a.m. this morning. What else do we see? Walmart has indicated that they're going to start raising prices due to the additional costs associated with the Trump tariffs. In deal news, Charter Communications and Cox Communications are set to merge. That's a big merger. I mean, the streaming is really taking a chunk out of these cable companies. Boeing gets another big order for 28 planes. Wow. Looks like Coinbase is trading higher. Remember, yesterday they had that news on the hack. But today the stock is trading slightly higher. Up about $5, but Monday they're being added to the S&P 500, so that's something to keep an eye on. And then in terms of earnings, AMAT, Take-Two, they're trading lower after earnings. CAVA is flat. Next week we got earnings from Home Depot, Palo Alto Networks, Target, TJ Maxx, Lowe's, Snowflake, Deckers Outdoor, Autodesk, and Intuit. They're all scheduled to report next week, so we got a lot of good earnings coming up. And then we're taking a look over at Europe, and Europe is interesting because we are showing some gains across the board. I mean, the DAX is up 0.57% or 134 points. I mean, EU officials have indicated that the bloc is pushing for a more comprehensive tariff reduction deal with the U.S. than those currently being out there. Those are currently out there from the UK and China. So that's positive. And then the FTSE up 0.38% or 32 points. You got nice gains going on in pharma stocks. France, the CAC is up 40 points or 0.52%. Corporate earnings also positive. Trade talks keeping that index in the green. That's all good to see. Then we're turning our attention over to Asia last night, and we're looking at the Nikkei, which was flat. I mean, it was down 1.79 points, so 0.0%. GDP in Japan came in at negative 0.2 against expectations of 0.1 reading. That's really causing some concern, but it just wasn't enough. The market was really dead over there in Japan. Hong Kong, on the other hand, Hong Kong fell 108 points. That's 0.46%. Disappointing corporate earnings. You're talking Alibaba. That really weighed on the index. And then in China, the market fell. Not significantly, but 0.4%. I mean, trade concerns are a key focus out there in China, and the weak earnings from Alibaba didn't help. And then there's talk that the U.S. Commerce Department is considering placing more firms on its blacklist, and that's not positive. That's causing a little bit of concern over there in China. Then we look at oil, and oil has turned. I mean, oil is now higher by 0.2%. You got WTI at $61.73. You got Brent at $64.67. Oil was lower, was 0.2% lower. Now it's 0.2% higher. I mean, it's kind of it's positive on these global trade deals. That's that's helping boost the support. Yet it's still cautious on the elevated production that's coming out of OPEC. But for today, we're seeing some higher prices, and oil is going to close out the week with a gain. So that's what I have for you in terms of morning market update, Emily.
No shortage of information to be following on this Friday, Bill, as we're to wrap up a week here. See if we can keep this bit of a rally going. You did mention earnings in your opening report, and there was a couple that came out, and as you mentioned, a bunch to look ahead to next week, some big names. So let's start there. Bill, what is going on in terms of earnings action?
Well, CAVA came out with a strong beat. They beat by 7 cents on higher revenue. Applied Materials, AMAT, AMAT, Apple Michael, Apple Tom, they beat by 8 cents. But you know what? They did it on lower revenue. You look at AMAT this morning, stock's down 5%. Take-Two, TTWO, Tom, William, Oscar, they missed by 4 cents. But there's not a lot of coverage on the stock. But their guidance was ugly too. I mean, that stock's down 1.65% this morning. In terms of upcoming earnings, there's nothing this afternoon, and Monday morning is really light. I mean, we've got a number of good ones coming out, but that's later in the week. But for Monday morning, I don't see anything really significant being released, Emily.
We will make sure to continue to update our listeners as we progress through next week in order to follow all of those earnings that you mentioned. And now we're going to get to the day's economic events. You did point out at least 2 reports that are worth watching, but there's a bunch of other stuff going on today when it comes to economic events. So, Bill, what is going on there?
8:30 a.m. we get housing starts and building permits. At 8:30 a.m. we also have import-export prices. At 10 a.m. we get consumer sentiment. 1 p.m. you get the Baker Hughes rate count figures. 6 p.m. Richmond Fed Bank President Thomas Farkin will be speaking, and then at 8:40 p.m. Eastern Time, San Francisco Fed Bank President Mary Daly will be speaking. What can I say? If you look at jobless claims yesterday, they came in at 229K, which is slightly above the expectations. So that was interesting. But the consumer sentiment report is really an interesting report because it's been so ugly for the last couple of months that it's due for a turn. And I'm looking at the expectations for the consumer sentiment report. They're at 53, which is slightly better than the last reading of 52.2. So a positive sentiment report could really help this market, continue to hold these gains that we're seeing this morning. So that's what I have for you in terms of an economic update this morning, Emily.
Bill, what I appreciate about your updates, especially on the economic front there, is that you're giving us context. You're not just listing the reports, but what are these reports happening? They don't happen in a vacuum. And you're giving us the context of those reports so that you can anticipate some market moves. Earnings actions the same way, and other market moving information. You have NewsWare's, so you're gathering this data day in and day out. So you're not looking at just today, but you can look ahead and you can also put it in context to the information that has come out previously. When you're looking at data, news, and information in the morning, you're also looking at things like merger news, guidance news, shareholders meetings, buyback news. You're grouping your stocks together like your FANG stocks and your Dow 30 stocks. So, Bill, what else do you see as possibly moving the markets today?
I'm just doing a quick data check. I got 26 higher on the Dow. I got 4 lower. So we're seeing a lot of positive activity this morning, which is good to see. And NVIDIA and United Healthcare are really leading the gains this morning. In terms of the FANG stocks, Meta's down a little bit, but everything else is trading higher. So that's good to see. In terms of news behind the tape, like Amazon, Amazon's web services and UAE's Cybersecurity Council have launched a sovereign cloud launchpad. Interesting. This comes as a direct result out of Trump's visit. Google surpasses IBM in generative AI related patents. Nice. Meta. You know why Meta's down today? Because they're delaying the rollout of their new AI model. That's really what's causing it. In terms of Dow Jones 30 stocks, we're talking Apple. Epic Games, they make Fortnite, okay? Apple has blocked access to Fortnite in the U.S. and Europe. You can't download it off of your Apple iPhone in the App Store. Ooh, not good. Let's talk J.P. Morgan for a second. Okay, J.P. Morgan's trading higher this morning. It's up about 0.3%. But the fact of the matter is that there's a shareholders meeting on Monday. They're going to be talking about Jamie Dimon's succession plan. That could hit the stock because that guy's worth $25 to that stock price. Microsoft has a coding conference that's going to begin on Monday. That could be something. But it does look like they're going to be able to dodge those EU antitrust fines related to Teams, because remember they bundled Teams into Microsoft Office and they raised the price. So now they're going to be lowering the price and removing Teams from that Microsoft package. In terms of merger news, big one. Charter Communications and Cox Communications are set to merge. They're going to go under the name Cox in near future. But wow, the streamers guys are really taking cable head on, and they're winning. In terms of guidance news, Take-Two Interactive, TTWO, they see full year 2026 revenue coming in at negative $2.45 to a negative $2.79. And the street had an estimate out there was a positive 96 cents. Now, it's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. But I need to point out there's only one estimate out there. So one guy got it wrong. It's not a consensus. It's one guy. Applied Materials, AMAT, they see Q3 adjusted EPS at $2.35. But they did give you a caveat of plus or minus 20 cents. Street estimates at 231. So I guess I'd look at that as a positive. In terms of shareholders meetings going on today, ICE, they're going to have a shareholders meeting today at 8:30 a.m. Oh, Macy's, ticker M, they're having a shareholders meeting at 10, and JWM, Nordstrom's, they're having a shareholders meeting today at noon. In terms of buyback news, Globus Medical, they announced a 500 million share repurchasing program. That's all I'm seeing this morning, Emily.
This is the type of data that NewsWare delivers daily. It's factual, it's market moving, and our alerting functions bring it to your attention as it happens. Go to www.newsware.com now and sign up for the trial and see for yourself the benefits that professional NewsWire delivers. It is now that time of the show for the Trade Talk pick of the day. Bill, what do you have for us to end this week?
I'm going to go with Novo Nordisk, ticker NVO, Nancy Victor Oscar. Okay, it was announced that the CEO is going to change. He's stepping down. Now, CEO changes can definitely cause disruption in the stock price because, a lot of the hedge funds, they'll sell a portion of their position. That's going to cause some AM weakness. But the guy's not totally leaving. He's going to, still be around. It's going to be around for a long time, it appears. And so it's a bit of an overreaction. I look at yesterday's call volume, 28,000 calls versus 142,000 puts, indicates to me that this was a known event, that there were guys out there who knew that this was happening. So see again, I do think that this is an overreaction, and I can hear the stock is trading, 62.30 on the bid. If I can get in, under 62.50, if I can get in at 62 to 62.50, that would be a steal. That would be an absolute steal because I think the stock moves higher from there and can easily gain 1% from there. So my pick of the day is ticker NVO, Nancy Victor Oscar, 62.50 is what I'll say for an entry price, Emily.
Novo Nordisk, it is today, trading the news cycle along with looking at that data. And we will check in just a moment before we sign off on yesterday's pick of the day. So stick with us through that. But first, let's take a look at the current breaking headlines that have hit the tape in our Hot Off the Press segment. Bill, take it away.
Apple could ramp iPhone assembly up in India by up to 65% by the fall. Trump says that they're setting tariff rates in the coming weeks, and they're going to be fair with other nations. A Charter Cox deal, that's a $21.9 billion deal. BioMarin, BMRN, they're going to be acquiring a company this morning. I see Flower Foods, FLO, stocks trading lower after releasing their Q1 earnings and guidance cut. CAVA, TEVA, they received a credit upgrade to BA1 from BA2 from Moody's with a stable outlook. I mean, that's good for Teva. They sell generic drugs. Ticker KVUE, Third Point takes a 9 million share stake in Kenvue. Well, this is all the rage. Walmart plans to raise prices affected by the Trump tariffs. I mean, it's going to really help their revenue. So if the tariffs go up, they're not going to lower their prices immediately. So there's a gain. There's a net uptick for them. Morgan Stanley, they're going to be held in a shareholders meeting today at 8, I think. Citi's cutting up to 200 tech contracting roles in China. That's all I'm seeing this morning, Emily.
Okay, Bill, before we sign off for the week and get to trading on this Friday, let's do that check-in on yesterday's pick of the day, which was CAVA Group. Now, you did just mention those upticks with Walmart. Speaking of upticks, I'm looking at my newsware here, and I can see that there's been price target raises on CAVA by Baird, Citi, JP Morgan, amongst others. This is after their earnings release that you pointed out during your earnings rundown. They did beat on both fronts. They reported a Q1 EPS of 22 cents, better than the consensus of 15 cents. They've reported a Q1 revenue of $328.5 million, ahead of the consensus of $327.71 million. They reported same restaurant sales growth of 10.8%, including guest traffic growth of 7.5%. They did raise their adjusted full year 2025 adjusted EBITDA view, and they backed their full year 2025 same restaurant sales growth. Really a solid report all around, Bill. And how did your call work out?
Worked out good. I mean, yesterday, look at the fact. The stock opened up at $99.54, and it had a high yesterday of 194. So off the opening tick, I mean, there was that gain. Now, I saw it tick down to 98 yesterday. Now, my data says 98.31, but I saw it tick down to 98 yesterday. But, stock closed at 99.06. It's already at a high of $99.47. I still think there's more gains to come in CAVA because you know what? It was a good report. But the 1% was there yesterday off the opening price. So you got to call that a win. You got to call that a win, Emily.
Another win there, keeping the streak going, and we'll see if we can keep that going and see if the S&P can keep its streak going when we check in with you on Monday about today's Novo Nordisk pick of the day. Bill, thank you as always for your expert insight. Join us back here Monday and each weekday morning next week with NewsWare's Trade Talk when we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Again, I'm your host, Emily Vani, here with trading anchor Bill Olson. Traders, you know what to do. Let's go out there and make some green.